Hi everyone, good morning. I'm Federico Mazzoli, I lead product at dLocal. Everything you've been hearing so far is really complex, especially considering the size of dLocal today. The only way to achieve what we are building is relying on the biggest leverage there is, which is technology. Over 40% of our headcount is technology, so we are basically a technology-first company. Today, I want to tell you about some of the products that we are building at dLocal, but most importantly, how do we decide what to build and how do we make it happen. On our mission to build the best payment infrastructure in emerging markets, it is key to build products and services that are up to the expectations of these global enterprises. That means building the tools to manage payments in 40 countries a breeze, but at the same time, building the payment experiences for customers, which are both modern and adapted to the latest UX trends on the industry, but at the same time feel familiar to the average consumer in the countries that we operate. Let me show you a few examples. With Meta, we launched in over 14 countries in just a matter of months, crazy months, where we developed a bunch of custom-built payment experience using alternative payment methods. One of those examples is Pix in Brazil. As it was mentioned before, Pix is right now the top alternative payment method in Brazil by a mile. And for Facebook, we built custom payment experiences, so Facebook didn't have to lift a finger. It was all done by dLocal. Now users can pay for advertisements on Facebook thanks to us. For Amazon in Chile, we built a white label payment experience where the user cannot tell that dLocal is behind the scenes for them to pay with local cards in the country. Not only that, but we also enabled installments, which was a first for Amazon worldwide, and that is key in Latin America. For Spotify in Kenya, we enabled M-Pesa. As Jaco mentioned before, M-Pesa is everywhere in the country. It's the most relevant payment method out there. And now users on Spotify can pay for packages of Spotify Premium, either monthly packages or weekly packages, using any feature phone. In fact, the weekly package is only available using M-Pesa, both because it's cheaper and it's also the most relevant payment method for their target audience for the product. Philippines has a very low market penetration, banking penetration. Only about half of the population has access to a bank account. By combining payouts to bank accounts and to e-wallets, we've managed to accomplish a 99.5% payouts approval rate for deal. And of those payouts, about a third of those are made to e-wallets. But if any of these merchants wanted to launch any of these experiences and even expand to other countries, they would have to partner with dozens of different providers around the globe. But we've centralized this in one place, and we provide the tools to do so. From centralized reporting, where you can see all the transactions around the globe with all the different payment methods from one place, to refund and chargeback management from one spot, to tools for the fraud prevention teams so they can dispute chargebacks in many countries at once. Now, how do we make this happen? How do we decide what to build and how do we do it? So, first of all, we're B2B native. This means that we've been working with enterprise companies since day one. That has been our focus. Our product team works very, very closely with our key customers. In fact, our product roadmap is directly driven from the feedback of our customers. We're not trying to invent the metaverse or anything, we just listen to them. And by listening to them and these big companies, they require custom solutions, and we are there to help. Whatever works in the US, in Europe, the markets that they are usually familiar with, will probably not work in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America. And we're there to bridge that gap. Second of all, we prioritize our developments based on their business impact. And for this, we take a very first principles approach. Basically, our utmost priority is keeping the business continuity. That means keeping our platform secure, scalable by very diligently automating every manual process that's out there, but also adapting to the ever-changing local regulations. But that's important to keep the business running. We need to make it grow. And for that, we use the gross profit as our North Star. For every new development, we work very closely with the commercial team to analyze how much new TPV is that development gonna bring, or with our operations teams to see how much cost we're gonna save by developing a feature. By using these metrics, it allows us to be very aligned with the rest of the company, and that's super important. Our one API principle that you've been hearing before is at the core of everything that we do. We've said this already, but by integrating to our one API, you have access to all the features that we offer in all the different markets. This is key because every feature that we build for a merchant in a country will also be available for other merchants and in other countries. I'm going to explain a little bit about that in a second. And finally, we're agile to the core. We are completely allergic to bureaucracies, excuses. We move fast. And by delivering and shipping fast and often, we make sure that we are up to the expectations of our merchants for both speed and performance. Now, let's see how our merchants sees us compared to the competition in all the aspects that are essential for the product. First of all, as Maria showed, we've been doing cross-border payments since day one. Any merchant, any global merchant that wants to launch in multiple countries and complicated as ours very fast, they're probably not going to have a local entity. It takes years of getting the licenses, getting the people. It's super complex. So they usually want to get paid abroad, either in USDs or euros. So we made that happen, as opposed to most of the other competition. By offering the most relevant local payment methods in every country, we make it as easy to pay online as it is to buy the newspaper in the next door kiosk. Global PSPs, who are mostly focused on the US and Europe, they leave the emerging markets as their last priority. That's the truth. So they don't even have the fraction of the payment methods that we support. Our state-of-the-art API makes it as easy to launch in Nigeria or Bolivia as it might be to launch in Spain or Canada. It is up to the part of those global PSPs, but with the added complexity of emerging markets. And finally, as I mentioned before, we are enterprise first, so that means custom solutions. We need to build custom solutions. Every merchant comes with very different, very special requests, and you're only going to get that deal if you listen to them and you do what they need. But how do we balance custom solutions with the speed that I was mentioning before, with the scale that is needed to work in 40 countries? That's a big question, right? And part of the reason to answer that is the way that we are organized as a company. The stack that Gabby showed before does not only reflect how we are organized as a team, but it's directly reflected on our technology stack as well. It all starts with integration layer with our merchants. Many of the merchants like to integrate to us via our API, but many others, they want us to integrate to theirs. That's what we call a reverse API. Or they ask for a custom build checkout because maybe today they don't have the resources, the technical resources to do it, or many other crazy things that they come up with. We have dedicated teams to make that happen, and this is a lot of work that most other PSPs are not willing to take. Then comes the product layer. This is where all the business logic of our core products comes in, from our pay-ins, payouts, local issuing, even our fraud prevention engine, our smart router, our transaction monitoring. This is where the brains of our products come in, but the key here is that all of these products are completely agnostic of the country of operation. Whenever we design one of these products, we design it in a way that it's going to work everywhere, in the countries that we have today and the ones that we're going to have tomorrow. Then comes the localization layer. This is where the real magic of dLocal kicks in. Every of these 40 markets that we work with today, they're extremely different from one another. From regulatory compliance reasons, different taxes that apply, even some countries have different FX sources, they're all completely different from one another. So by splitting the localization layer from the product layer, we make it as easy to add new countries as easy as possible, and whenever we need to adapt a country because the regulation changed again, it won't affect the operation of the other countries. And finally, at the bottom, there's a local partner layer. Since 2016, we've integrated with over 400 local partners. That's a lot. Each of these partners, each of these integrations can take up months at a time to do so, without counting maybe the licenses that you might need to get to work with them. And we have 400 of those. Those 400 partners enable over 900 payment methods. As I mentioned before, this reflected on our teams, our technology. We have teams dedicated to launching new partners in Latin America. We have teams in Africa dedicated to launching payment methods in Africa. The same thing in Asia. But we don't make it as regional as that. We have people in China who work with payment methods in Brazil. We have people in Chile who integrate payment methods in South Africa. This cross-regional knowledge is something that we really value because it's a way to expand your head, see what's possible. In many cases, working in India gives us the experience to see what's going to happen in Uruguay or in Argentina. It's a way to see the future. Now, why going this local? Why even bother to go this local? Well, there are many reasons to do so. First of all, merchants can maximize their reach, maximize their audience by using local acquiring and local payment methods. As Seba mentioned before dLocal, if you wanted to process in any emerging markets, users would have to pay with an international credit card. That's probably less than 10% of the audience. Perhaps I was a little bit generous with the happy faces there. With dLocal, that's a completely different picture. Using local acquirers, which are both, they know the local issuers a lot better than international acquirers. They enable local solutions like installments, which international acquirers cannot, but also the local payment methods. Being able to pay with cash, with bank transfers, with e-wallets, with mobile money. Every country is different, and our recommendation always is just offer everything. Give all the options. Let the user pick. That's the only way to maximize your target audience. But it doesn't stop here. Having multiple partners per country also allows you to maximize conversion rates. Whenever a transaction comes through, a card transaction comes through dLocal, our smart router, it's an AI engine that we built in-house, will dynamically pick which is the best converting processor for that transaction, based on dozens of different attributes. And it depends on the strategy of the merchant. We can optimize for conversion rate, or to minimize delay, or even to minimize costs. But if a transaction gets declined, we can try, the smart chaining kicks in, so we can reroute the transaction to the second best option and recover that transaction. Just to put an example, with Didi Food in Mexico, once we launched and we turned on the smart router, we got a 2.6 percentage point increase in conversion rate. That's a lot. And once we turned on the smart chaining, that number went up to 7 percentage point increase. That means that 7 out of 100 additional people were able to order their food just fine, thanks to dLocal. But it obviously doesn't stop here. In 2016, when we launched pay-ins and payouts, we've been evolving and expanding our products by working very closely to our merchants and listening to their feedback and listening to their requirements and the requirements of their customers as well. Nowadays, we've made it as easy to work in Nigeria as it might be to do it in the UK. By launching white label payment solutions for both cards and alternative payment methods, for multi-currency management, so you can aggregate the payments of 40 countries into one single solution. We even found synergies between our products. For example, doing refunds for alternative payment methods that are not cards is extremely complex. But by leveraging on our payout infrastructure, now users in emerging markets can receive their money back after doing a payment with alternative payment methods. In 2021, we launched local issuing. And today, I want to tell you about two of our new products, which are dLocal for platforms and invoice collection. dLocal for platforms is an end-to-end solution for marketplaces and other kinds of platforms to process payments in the emerging markets from one single place. Managing any of these platforms is complex enough already, so we try to make it as easy as possible so they don't even have to worry about payments. But these kind of platforms come in all shapes and sizes, so we designed our platform to be as flexible and dynamic as possible. Let me show you a few examples. You can think of an e-commerce marketplace in Mexico, for example. Imagine the experience. A user in Mexico selects a few products. Some might be from a local Mexican seller, some might be from a cross-border one, and they click on pay. With dLocal, they have access to all the relevant payment methods in the country, and they can pay, let's say they pick a card, they can pay in one transaction to their card. We would collect those funds, we would split those payments between the different sellers. So for the Mexican seller, we would settle in Mexican pesos to their account. For the international sellers, we can settle in US dollars, and then they can withdraw those funds in their currency of choice, in their country of choice. We make it that simple. Or you can also think of a ride-sharing app in Brazil. There's local regulations in Brazil. It requires the acquirer, or the sub-acquirer in the case of dLocal, to settle directly to the merchant, which in this case would be the driver. In this case, we would onboard thousands of sellers each week. We would run KYC to make sure that they are legitimate. And we would directly put the funds in an account created by dLocal exclusive for those drivers. From there, the drivers can use the local issue card to pay for groceries, or they can choose to withdraw their funds to their own external bank accounts. Or you can also think about a social media app. Let's say a Chinese social media app that wants to launch in Nigeria. But this platform, they already have the ledger and the balance of each of their content creators or sellers. They don't want to rely on dLocal to manage all those different balances themselves. That's fine too. We can centralize those balances, and at the moment of the payout, the platform can choose how much money to send either locally or cross-border to each of their partners. Now, building all these experiences, and these are just a few examples, there are much more, requires this suite of products, right? Each of these products could be a company by its own. We can go through them one by one real quick. So first of all, it's the onboarding and KYC. So we provide APIs to make the onboarding experience feel white label, so the user doesn't need to know that dLocal is behind the scenes. And we run automated KYC process to make it very easy, fast, and scalable to check if the user is legitimate and able to process on our platform. Then comes the accepting payments, which is obviously our bread and butter, but this time with the added complexity of accepting payments for multiple sellers on one single transaction. Then we provide the tools to either split the payments when a transaction comes in, or to move funds around between accounts. Fourth, we have the settlements. As I mentioned before, we can pay out to sellers either locally or abroad, or even split funds for the platform itself, so we can pay out to them as well. And finally, we provide all the tools to manage these complex platforms in a centralized manner, from centralized reporting, refund and chargeback management, fraud support. This sounds like a lot, but it's actually the easy part. This belongs to the product layer that I was mentioned before. We are not the first to build this. We're not going to be the last. The key challenge for all of this, is to make it available in 40 emerging markets. That's the localization layer. That's how do we adapt this complex problem to the regulations, the complexity, the limitations, but at the same time the opportunities that these markets have. Now, let's talk about the other product I want to talk about today, which is invoice collection. Historically, at dLocal, we've been helping global merchants reach their small customers, the individual customers, let's say. But now, with invoice collection, we're helping them reach their largest paying customers as well. The teams that usually deal with this problem are the accounts receivable team that usually sit on a different table from the payments team that deal with small customers. This accounts receivable team, they usually don't count with the technical resources that the payments teams do. And so they require tools to make their life easier. And if it's in a centralized way, even better. And that's exactly what invoice collection does. They are flexible tools for multiple users. There's no coding required whatsoever. So as soon as the commercial deal is done, they can collect payments the next day. And just to put you an example, there are two ways to do it. The first one is what we call merchant-initiated payments. In this way, the accounts receivable team can upload the invoices that they need to charge. They can upload all the regulatory and tax documentation that might be required for the country, and they can send a payment link to their customer. Or we'll have the other flavor, which is customer-initiated payments, in which the customer already has a bunch of invoices that they need to pay for the merchant, and they can go themselves to the local hosted checkout, upload the invoices, upload the tax documentation, and send the payments in any payment method that they want to the merchant. In that way, the accounts receivable team doesn't need to do anything. As I was mentioned before, we handle all the taxes complexity. Every country is different. Every country might require different documentation or different tax logic. Users can pay using their local rails as opposed to sending an international wire transfer in dollars, which in some cases that can be complex. And the best of all is that it's one solution for 40 markets at once. Now, to summarize, now with the dLocal platforms, we allow small and medium businesses that operate via global enterprise to collect funds in local currency. And with invoice collection, we allow the account receivable teams of these enterprise companies to collect money from their largest paying customers as well. So with dLocal for platforms and invoice collection, we're expanding our target market. On our mission to build the best payment infrastructure in emerging markets, we will continue to work very closely to our merchants and to build the products and services that will become the enablers for the experiences that they want to bring into the world. In the same way that a woman in Kenya can pay with M-Pesa for bread, we want any Kenyan to be able to pay for an online course made in the US, or buy Chinese goods for their new business, or even receive funds from their social media business in Kenyan shillings. And that, for me, sounds like a very cool future. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to hand it to John. He's our Chief Revenue Officer, and he's going to tell you about how we work with our merchants. Thank you.
Sure, I'm on. Can you hear me? You can hear me. Great. Morning, all. How are you? Tough crowd this morning? No? Okay. All right. Well, I guess we've been talking for some time this morning, so maybe it's a bit more challenging. Okay, guys, just a very brief introduction to myself. So it's fair to say, John O'Brien, the Chief Revenue Officer for dLocal. I can't quite believe I'm saying this, but I've been in payments for over 15 years. I know I don't look it yet. I'm 38, been in payments for 15 years. All of that time has been in enterprise e-commerce payments. So last 5 years prior to joining dLocal, I was an executive on the management team for WorldPay's enterprise e-commerce business. So all of the clients that Seb and others referenced earlier today in the slides, I've worked with all of those companies in developed markets and in some markets in Asia and Latin America as well. So I have a really good understanding of the business. I first met Agobo and Seba in 2019 when they were looking for, I think, the first outside funding. So got to know the business really, really well then. I was really impressed with the team. And to be honest with you, I was a bit frustrated why some of these customers were not working with us in some of those markets, given I already had volume with them in the US and Europe and other markets as well. I know some of you, I think, from putting together the revenue synergies on the Bank of WorldPay deal, I cannot quite believe that's coming back around again to put that combination together. But hopefully we'll share some of the experience I've had here in the last year of working with dLocal to change how we've structured the teams to enable the growth that Maria mentioned earlier. Good. Okay. We seem to love this slide. I've seen a lot of it this morning. So here's what we're going to cover, guys. So I'm going to go over the go-to-market strategy for dLocal, which is obviously underpinned by our one dLocal concept. I'll talk you through the sales funnel. It might sound like a really boring thing to talk about, but the sales funnel for us is incredibly important because there's an inherent feedback loop in that sales funnel which drives our acquisition of new logos, and I'll touch on that briefly. I'll also talk about our approach to pricing and negotiation. I understand from our IR guys that's come up quite a bit, like how do we actually handle those negotiations with customers and how do we target the team, etc. We'll do a brief pipeline overview for both our existing and also our net new customers. I'll talk a little bit about the team structure and how they're organized. And then finally, we'll hear from some customers. So I'll walk you through a couple of case studies, one from a global internet satellite company, which I think Seb may have already given the name to earlier, and then also one from our partners at Spotify. And then I'll play two testimonials, or one testimonial, I believe this morning we had two, but I'll play one from our partners at Deal, who work with us across 3 regions and in 20 different markets. And then finally, I'll wrap up and hand over to Diego and hopefully get you guys out of here in time. Okay. So as Seb shared, clients are at the heart of everything that we do. I mean, I have a fundamental belief myself that B2B enterprise strategy is really not that complicated. We talked about it yesterday. The really, really difficult stuff is the execution side of things, and that's been my experience in learning over the last 15 years. Like, we do not have to guess or be really clever about the products the customers want us to build. Like, we just have to talk to them and listen to them, and that's a key thing that attracted me, when I was looking for my next challenge to join a company, and coming into the company too. Like, that is the way that folks think on a day-to-day basis. Like, there's not a lot of ego around how we think about the products and the markets. All of those things are very closely tethered to a real-world outcome with a merchant on the back end. And as Seb and Marie mentioned, I mean, these guys are really proud to have them as customers, and they drive our overarching underlying growth. Okay. So again, this is what we would call a plan on the page for our go-to-market strategy. So if I was summarizing our go-to-market strategy, I probably should have put it on the slide, but I would use 3 Ps. So platform, product, and people. So the platform, like, it is not normal in emerging markets to have scalability and reliability, and that is what the platform brings. The product for us is hyper-responsive to client needs, and I said that piece around really not being too clever and making sure we're closely tethered to the customers is a critical part of our go-to-market proposition and how we engage and talk to customers. And then finally, our people. So the people obviously underpin the delivery of our service. We go for a true localization model there and meet the customers where they're at. So if I give you an example of Shein today, we work with them in South Africa, we work with them in Brazil, in Mexico. Their entire payments team is all in China, right? So we have to meet them where they're at. We have to have folks that speak Mandarin and offer that local service, but we also have to have experts who work in those markets who ensure we're delivering a best-in-class service for them as a customer too. So we wrap those 3 Ps together, and that's really how we get into our lead generation. That's how we talk to new prospects and get them interested in the company. Once we have boarded those prospects, and boarding the prospects for us is all about long-term partnerships. So when we sign this customer, is this a customer who's going to be with us for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? We want these customers to be longer term. From my own experience in the enterprise space to it, it doesn't really behoove you to be signing up a lot of really, really small companies. You're much better off focusing on the Pareto principle and signing up those top 20% of customers because, without a shadow of a doubt, they deliver the 80% of the result that you're looking for. So land and expand is a key tenet of our commercial strategy. And we'll go into that in a bit more detail on some of the later slides there. The key thing about this strategy is once we've landed those customers, we use that feedback loop from the problems and pain points we've solved for those customers to drive our lead generation going forward. So if I know I've solved a specific pain point for Shein as a fast fashion retailer, it's highly probable that pain point I've solved is applicable to like a Farfetch or a Temu or somebody else, and we'll use that to be really targeted in our outreach to those companies and the key stakeholders that work there that make those decisions. Apologies if I speak really quickly. And I also have an accent that I'm not from Latin America, as I think most of you have picked up on. I've had far too much coffee this morning. The key part of this slide, guys, that I've said it a few times now, is just on the constructive feedback loop for us. So making sure we're tethered to that feedback loop from clients. The bits I would call out in terms of the structure of the team would be how we think about account managers. Like I think in a lot of software businesses, you think about account management as quite an operational role. For us, really account managers for us are like account executives. So we really target those guys on growing the absolute gross profit dollar amount we get from those customers and being the custodians of the relationship internally and driving everything related to that client. So the targets of these guys are all based on cross-sell and upsell and not on the underlying organic growth of the customers. And we believe that's the right way to reward our people and to push them as well. From an operational standpoint, we have a follow the sun model for our customer success teams. So we've got 53 people in the customer success team today, based in China, based in Africa, India, and across Latin America. And those guys own the operational relationship with all of our customers to free up the account managers to do that upselling and cross-selling that I noted there earlier. So really important that we have that feedback loop. And then when we're learning from boarding those customers like in Expedia and travel, we will pick up on what are the specific pain points that they had. We can then use that for any travel line, Airbnb, a booking.com, etc., and have a much more informed dialogue with them as it relates to our initial outreach and trying to board them as a client. This thing does not like me, I don't know. Okay, lead generation. So Seb has mentioned, I think, several others this morning, we're very big on ownership internally. And for me, inbound lead generation is owned by the marketing team. I haven't had them for the last month or so. They've been completely outsourced to our investor relations team. So I'm looking forward to the event being over so we can get back to working with them. But the marketing team own our inbound lead generation. And the inbound lead generation is all about events that we attend that are, industry specific or vertical specific. So if we know we're going into travel, like Focusrite, we know is a huge event to travel. So we should be there to try and meet those customers, understand their pain points, talk about our solution, etc. Driving specific marketing campaigns, to generate awareness and leads. So this year we've launched our first ever newsletter. We call it the Emerging Perspective. I'm sure we can get folks signed up to that after the event as well, which details what's going on in the company and what kind of pain points we're solving for customers on a global basis. And the marketing team own that inbound lead generation. The outbound lead generation is done by our sales and our sales development teams and is really specifically targeted on things like vertical attractiveness. So those verticals that Maria indicated to you that we work on earlier. I also want to make sure we replicate the process to go after those verticals because in my experience, if I introduce a new vertical into the sales cycle, that causes a lot of friction with Gabby and the team as well and slows down the overall path to revenue. So it's really important for us that we learn those lessons from the verticals that we're in with those customers and tether to that active feedback loop to be really precise and targeted when we reach out to customers as well. And of course, we use all of the modern software tools that are out there around research like Apollo and others as well to see whether these customers have traffic, do they have traffic on our markets, have they visited our website, are they expressing interest in our type of solutions, etc., etc. Okay, so this again is just our sales process on a page. It's actually 8 stages in total, but we're collapsing here for you guys because I imagine a lot of you find it pretty boring. I didn't want to go through all of it. On the next slide, I'll go through the proposals and the commercial negotiations as well. But as I think about the sales funnel in total for us, I know some folks have questions about like what part of the funnel should you optimize. I've been running sales teams for 15 years in enterprise. I've never seen a lot of benefit in optimizing between due diligence and integration. I see a lot of benefit in optimizing for the amount of qualified leads that you have up front. So that's what we focus on because if we do that, the natural conversion rate of the business will kick in. And for me, in a sales process, you want some natural tension because if you don't have natural tension, you get customers squeezing through that you don't want to squeeze through. You get opportunities with clients that are not that relevant for you either. So I'll give you one example. We had a really large German company come to us last year. They're a public company. They wanted to work with us in 20 plus markets. So initially sounded like a really great fit for us. We put them through the process. As we got to the integration with them, they said, actually, we think the revenue you guys should get from us in each of these markets is about 2 basis points. And when we looked at operationally what we thought that customer would represent for us and the load it would create on the organization, we turned that deal away. So it's really important to me and to the team that we're discerning about those things because we have to be good teammates to our colleagues as well. And I want to make sure in my role as well that we're putting resources to the clients that are going to generate revenue for the company. And I take that responsibility really seriously. And it's a core tenet of the company, as Seba mentioned earlier, to understand that we're custodians of that cost that we manage as well. And we don't try and, bring customers on just because it's a great name, but it may end up actually not being a great revenue deal for us and not representing the kind of upside that we want and looking like a really longer term partnership for us. Okay. A little bit on just the proposal and negotiation phase. So you're probably sick of hearing this because you've heard it on all of our earnings calls, but we asked the team to prioritize absolute gross profit dollars on each individual deal. Like there's no discussion I have with the team where I'm talking about the gross take rate or the net take rate, etc. Again, my own experience in payments is like it's not typically something that you can manage either. As you look at the other public payment companies like Adyen and others, it's not really something you're in charge of too much, given the large underlying costs you've got with interchange and scheme fees and things of that nature as well. So what we do ask the team to do, and it's really important for us, is be really clear on what is the pain point that we're solving for that customer, because a deep understanding of that pain point allows us to develop a solution that articulates really clear value, and then we price that value in. So absolutely, we ask ask the team the price on value, and that comes from a deep understanding of the pain point that we're actually solving on behalf of the customer. And then finally, making sure the pricing for those things and conditions are really, really clear in the agreements. I mean, we went through when we had to do our full year audit this year. I think that's the PwC audit, not just the balances, but all of the fees that we were charging for the customers as well. And with the nature of the book we have of customers, like we have some people like an Amazon whose full-time job is to do contract compliance, right? So someone who's checking every quarter, like the fees are how they meant to be, like are charging me the correct way, etc. So it's really, really important for us that those things are clear and transparent in our agreements with customers. And also we apply learning from our sales process. So as I go through a sales process where we're onboarding customers, if we see a specific legal term with Gabby and the team that is continually to come up from a certain cohort of customers, we'll have a dialogue to say, should we just adjust this wholesale in our agreement? Because actually it's slowing down the pipeline and is, creating some challenges with onboarding customers as well. So really, really important that we're clear and upfront on those things with customers. And although it's a simple strategy, we believe it to be really, really effective and drives the right incentives with the team. Okay, so next is just an overview on our pipeline. I'll just give you a very quick summary of what I mean by the different headers here. So on the top, you'll see net new sales. On the bottom, it's a pipeline for existing customers. So global multi-vertical companies are like your Microsofts, Apples, Amazons, etc. They typically have a B2B and a B2C component to their business, and they're successful in multiple verticals globally. The second one here, regional and vertical champions. So you'll hear from one of our regional champions, I think, through lunch when we play a video from Alejandro Stein at Rappi. And regional champions for us are companies that have had success in one specific region in 5 or 6 countries. So Rappi, I think, is a great example of that. Latin America, Food Panda is a great example of that. In APAC, Carry First or Jumia in Africa would be great examples of that as well. And then vertical champions are typically single line businesses. So like think about an Airbnb or an Expedia. So they're the vertical leaders in that particular business, or a Farfetch or a Shein in fast fashion as well. And the vast majority of where we ask the team to spend their time is on those 2 types of customers. There's obviously very few of the global multi-vertical companies, but as you can see here, we're in the process of onboarding 3 new ones, and we've got 2 at very late stage who are integrating with us now as well at the moment. And then finally, we have growth companies. So growth companies are folks who meet our minimal TPV threshold to work together. So we have a minimum TPV threshold of $6 million a year, and then a minimum market threshold of 2 to 3 markets. Because really, if it's just one market, we're not really solving the level of complexity we need to for those specific companies. But these are companies we believe have the ability to become a regional or a vertical champion, or in some instances to go out and become a global multi-vertical champion as well. So really, really important part of our sales process, and it's how we segment the clients internally and how we organize ourselves from an account management perspective as well. Yeah, next, guys, is just on our land and expand. So we said, for us, it's really important to start the relationships with customers in one market. What you'll see here on this page is a cross-selection of various different clients that we have when they made their initial purchase with dLocal. And as I flick through the slides, you'll see where that map is currently at today. And you'll see pretty significant growth, as I think Maria outlined earlier. I quite like it because it looks like Lego. Maybe not as simple as I am, but that's why I like it. Anyway. Yeah. So here you can see when all these companies added a new country with dLocal plotted on the map here. So this is when the new countries added for us became significant, because it became over $1 million in TPV per month. And you have to bear with me for the collage of colors here on the next slide. So we've added here also a second product in existing country. In each example here, it actually means payouts. So that company was doing pay-ins with us, they're now doing payouts as well. The slightly brighter green is to indicate when the second country in an existing market has got over $1 million in TPV. And then finally, we've added I have no idea what these colors are. I think it's a light pink and a kind of red, I don't know. But that's for invoicing that we've added more recently, which Federico touched on in his presentation. What we haven't added here is our marketplace solution, and we have had some of our top 20 customers take that solution from us really, really recently. So the next time we update this slide, we will be able to reflect that with you as well. But I think you can clearly see that strategy we have is working to start a relationship with the customers, structure the team so the account managers are targeted with upselling and cross-selling to those customers. And we've had I think if the guys will allow me, they've done, I think, a really phenomenal job of executing on that over the course of the last 6 years. Okay, I touched on this earlier, so I don't need to dwell on it, but again, the feedback loop and learning and listening to what's happening with customers is super, super important for us, and also goes into our product development methodology, which was so well articulated by Fed earlier, and is really, really important for us that we have that relationship and work together in concert as a team to make sure we're listening to those feedback loops actively, not overcomplicating things ourselves or getting in our own way. And we believe the closer we stick to these customers, we see time and time again that they take us to places that we want to be. And we think that will continue to happen in the future as long as we stay well tethered to those clients. Okay, a little bit on how the team is structured. So we run the team regionally, so we'll have a head of each individual region. That person will then look after new sales. New sales is new logo acquisition. Sales engineers are folks who help customers with integrations and configurations. Thankfully for us, because of the scale of the platform, we only have 18 of those folks globally. We don't need to materially add to the team. And historically, those folks have gone into other roles in the company. So Cecilia, who's here, ran that team for us previously, now runs geo expansion. I believe we have Seba Delfino, who's running one of our engineering teams, who used to run that function as well. That's really important for us, because it means people got frontline experience with clients, who then go off to work in more of an operational or back office role in the company. But they have that feedback who's really, really close to their chest about what the reality is like to sit in front of the customer, sell something to them, or have an issue or challenge with an integration as well. Our account management team, which we touched on, is doing cross-sell and upsell, and our customer success team, which is focused on delivering exceptional operational services to each of our customers. So we have 2 other functions which we wanted to centralize for now. One was on revenue operations. So that team basically makes sure that all of the things that are happening globally and learnings that we have are shared across each of the different regions, because it can be quite difficult to connect the team in China with the team in Americas, with the team in EMEA, etc. And we want to make sure we're sharing and learning from the best practices that are happening in each of the regions, what things customers are saying to us, etc. And the revenue operations team help us do that. We often will have things like fees we have to pass to these customers as well, and that's all centralized through the revenue operations team. And a really important feedback loop with Diego and his team on forecasting, opportunity analysis, etc. So huge part of the team. Really important to make the whole structure run well, and we believe it's important to have that global for now, but we will regionalize it over time. And then finally, our marketing and sales development team. So our marketing team, Gabby's here from the marketing team, and our sales development team are kind of regionalized today, but our view is and I think this is a good thing. I don't think historically we've been great at marketing. I think we're getting better. I don't know if I want to be a company that's great at marketing. I want to be a company that's really good at product and known for that. But this is something that you're starting to see us spend a little bit more on, because our learning, I think, over the last 12 months or so has been, as we make clients aware of the problems that we're solving, it's generating much greater interest. And obviously marketing is a really easy way for us to do that. And we want to keep those teams centrally for now, because if you don't, that cost can also get out of control as well. And I think now we're in a position where we're very actively managing what's the ROI we're getting from each of these events. I laugh when I go to Money 2020 and everyone's spending 200 grand on a booth, and we've got the coffee stand, which doubles as a booth, but is a third of the cost, But again, that's ingrained in the company. It's the kind of culture we have. It's important to be frugal and to be smart about how we're spending things, and to really carefully track that ROI as well. And over time, we'll also look to regionalize those teams, because as you've heard from folks here, hyper-localization for us brings extraordinary benefits to us. It really does. Okay, so I think now the video will play from our partners at Deal. So maybe I'll just give a brief intro to Dan. So Dan's the COO at Deal. It's a payroll company. He'll talk more about it. Super demanding client. They push us a lot. We work with them in 20 markets across APAC, LATAM, and Africa as well. And really pleased that Dan took the time to put this together for us. And we will let you hear from him. If I have to press.
I'm Dan Westgarth, the COO at Deal. Deal is a global HR company that helps businesses hire, manage, and pay a global workforce, no matter where they're located. Remote work and paying global workforces has manifested a number of new needs, primarily around collecting and dispersing money. Deal helps businesses onboard, employ, and pay employees and contractors around the world. We're able to collect money from those businesses and distribute funds to their employees and contractors globally. That's where dLocal comes in as our infrastructure provider to help us settle those transactions around the world. Sending money in emerging markets is incredibly difficult. You're basically limited to the interbanking network, which uses SWIFT. So sending funds into emerging markets typically is very slow, expensive, and opaque. Working with a provider like dLocal makes it fast, transparent, and an all-around better customer experience. As a global payroll company, our clients cannot miss payroll, which means the payments we make with dLocal must be accurate and on time every time. And that level of service isn't typically required in the payment industry. Many players in the payment industry are paying vendors, they're paying other businesses, they're paying other counterparties. Here we're paying contractors and employees, and that salary must arrive on time without error. And dLocal has been able to meet our needs. We've been able to successfully deliver millions of salaries around the world to the tune of billions of dollars on time and accurately. We started working with dLocal in Latin America, primarily in Uruguay and surrounding markets. We were very impressed with the operational efficiency and local market expertise in LATAM. And then we were able to extend that relationship into parts of Middle East Africa and also APAC. And we've seen the same level of expertise and operational quality over there. I think of customer success working in two different areas. One is the transactional operational area, and the second is the longitudinal relationship and commercial area. In the transactional one, dLocal has been amazing. We're able to resolve any operational errors or issues very quickly. And on the longitudinal side of things, the relationship has been really good. dLocal is able to understand our needs as a business and help build solutions that meet those needs. I think when there's a difficult payment corridor, dLocal is a preferred partner. dLocal isn't covering the entire globe, or at least we aren't using dLocal to cover the entire globe. We are using dLocal in the most difficult markets, and that's really where the value is for us.
Cool. Thank you, Dan, if you're listening. Okay, I'm just conscious of time. I think I'm going to get Diego up here. So just two quick examples we'll run over here, guys. So this is for a global leading internet service provider, or satellite internet service provider. Pain point for them was needing to become a utility in 11 emerging markets across APAC, LATAM, and EMEA in an incredibly short space of time, so over a 3-month span, primarily because they'd received licenses to offer those services domestically in those markets. They had no staff or people in those markets as well, so really difficult for them to operate there. And before we interacted with them, they were contemplating integrating into 11 different processors across each of those markets. So obviously the 11 different processors bring with it issues with reconciliation, contracts, relationships, etc. So main cause for that from their end was, prior to this, they worked with an international acquirer, so a number of those payment instruments like Verve and others that were mentioned by the team here were not enabled for those folks. And having that goal of wanting to become a utility in those particular markets is really, really difficult if you're trying to do it on a cross-border basis with an international acquirer. So really happy to say we're able to meet the deadline for the client, launch them in the 11 markets. They had planned to do 15 with us this year. I think we'll now do over 20 markets with them in the next year. We launched Mozambique last week and we launched Nigeria with them 2 days ago. So really, really excited to be partnering with those guys as a company. And I think as that product and business scales, it will be really, really, phenomenal customer for us in the future as well, and also drive, one of the pillars that Maria mentioned earlier, which is internet penetration in emerging markets also. Okay. Yeah, and then but final slide here on Spotify in Nigeria, just to explain the pain points we have. So acceptance rates were dropping rapidly in Nigeria last March for Spotify. Obviously, the impact for them were like reduced sales in Nigeria and churning subscribers. Causes for that, I think Moses and Jacobo touched on some of them earlier. So government restricted access to dollars locally. I think, as you guys know, they export oil in Nigeria. They import more or less everything else in the country. So dollar liquidity comes at a premium, and that resulted in a net acceptance rate of about 20% for Spotify, 20% for Spotify overnight from 50 or 60% prior. So we were able to turn on local processing for Spotify, but with Verve cards, but also with Naira locally, stop the churn of those subscribers, increase the conversion to back up to over 60%. And from what we've seen from the team, and they've shared from their own data, we actually helped increase sales in that market for Spotify as a customer as well. So really, really happy to be able to do that. Hako and I had a lived experience of this when we were in Lagos last September, where Uber's general manager thanked us for enabling this because he could finally pay for Spotify in Naira himself as well. So really rewarding for myself and for the team to see the labours of our work as well when we travel to the different countries that we operated. Okay. And then, guys, I think we've covered this a number of times, and I mentioned kind of the 3 Ps, which are the critical thing really for how we work. So it's the platform and reliability, and the fact we're able to do that at scale. Our people providing a true localization on the service, and really, really being modest and humble when it comes to how we think about product. And I think that's really underpinned by the fact that, as I think Fede mentioned earlier, or maybe Hako, over 40% of the people in the company are software engineers. So we're really able to deliver quickly for people on those types of solutions because of the nature of the kind of folks we have who are engineers. They think through things in a really systematic fashion, so we don't tend to run into some of the other challenges that the other payment companies had. And as we continue to scale the company into these different markets, for me that moat just continues to build because it's really, really difficult to replicate these things and really, really difficult to run a business like that truly locally. Okay, I've taken up far too much time. I think I'm going to hand over to Diego. Guys, thank you very much for your time. I'll be around all day and hopefully catch up with some of you in person.